Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans and you're watching the John Cedars channel from the bunker, and in this video I want to talk about corporal punishment. Corporal punishment, of course, being physical punishment. This is a subject I wanted to address because of its prevalence among Jehovah's Witnesses. Particularly, I would suggest children of my generation and earlier perhaps will be familiar with this sort of discipline. And who knows, maybe it's still going on. I just noticed that society in general is far more sensitive to the mistreatment and abuse of children. And I'm hoping, I could be wrong, it just seems logical to me that parents would be more mindful of that, regardless of what their religion or what their culture, you could say, has trained them to do with their children. But certainly in my case, I was smacked as a child. I remember vividly my father bending me over his knee and taking a leather strap or a leather belt and smashing it against my backside, and it really hurt. It was very distressing. I don't think he enjoyed doing it. I found it very scary, very terrifying. And it was always done with a religious justification. And it's not hard to find the religious justification. It's actually in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 24. You think of the phrase, spare the rod, spoil the child. In the New World Translation, the current manifestation of those words, incarnation, you could say, is whoever holds back his rod hates his son, but the one who loves him disciplines him diligently. So my understanding as a child who was being physically beaten as a form of discipline was, this is what the Bible requires. And if as your father I were to not do this, it would actually be telling you that I don't love you. I'm doing it because I love you and because this is what I'm instructed to do by God through the Bible. So that was the justification. Again, I can only hope, it's really just wishful thinking, I can only hope that witness parents today are able to rationalize that this isn't perhaps something that they need to carry out literally. I mean, who knows, I could be wrong. I do know that it was something that I had to think about, obviously, when I had my own child, and bear in mind that I formally left Jehovah's Witnesses, at least in part because I wanted a fresh start for my daughter, Jessica. So I wasn't obviously beholden to any of the old rules, to any of the things that my religion convinced me were normal. But frankly, I never considered corporal punishment to be normal. And so I was interested to know whether it would be possible to discipline a child, to raise a child without corporal punishment. Because in the back of your mind, you're thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to be spoiling them. Maybe by failing to hit my child when they're naughty or when they're disobedient, I'm actually going to end up ruining them, and they're going to be an intolerable person to be with. But what's interesting is I found that by not hitting Jessica, I feel as though I'm achieving more in terms of disciplining her. Because bottom line, when you hit your child, I think that your child loses some respect for you. I honestly can't say that I respected my dad when he was hitting me, because violence, especially violence towards children, it's not a sign of strength, it's a sign of cowardice and weakness. You're using your natural advantage to abuse someone. So with Jessica, obviously she's now 5 years old, and I can say I've never raised a finger to her. Same thing with Deanna. And we've found that we've been able to discipline her simply through withholding things from her that she likes. So on one occasion so far, we've had to send her to her room for a while to think about what she's done. That's happened once. On other occasions, we've said you can't watch videos for the rest of the day. Today she was naughty and I said no more sweet things for the rest of the day. And she was really upset by that. She was properly crying. You know, you could tell that this was uncomfortable for her. I like to think that that has had an effect. It's something that she wants and she can't have it. She's learning that bad behavior is met with consequences. And that's all that discipline is for. And I'm proud to say that in Jessica's case, those consequences are not physical abuse. I think that, well, first of all, let me talk a little bit about Geoffrey Jackson. I don't feel we can do this subject justice without referring to what Geoffrey Jackson said during the Australian Royal Commission hearings in 2015.
Does your church accept corporal punishment of children?
Our church accepts the family arrangement and expects that parents have the responsibility to discipline and raise their children.
That doesn't answer my question. Do you accept corporal punishment?
In our literature, I think you'll see time and time again, we've endeavoured to explain that here, discipline is referring to more a mental point of view.
I regret to tell you, you're still not answering my question. Do you accept corporal punishment?
No.
You don't?
Not personally, no. And not as an organisation. We don't encourage it.
So I remember watching this testimony and just being completely floored at how disingenuous Geoffrey Jackson's comments were. Bear in mind that, like many who were raised in the Jehovah's Witness religion, I again experienced firsthand the fact that corporal punishment is a thing for children of Jehovah's Witnesses. And you don't have to go far in the literature to find evidence of this. So let me read to you from the Good News to Make You Happy book from 1976. This is on page 166. There are times, of course, when every child needs discipline, even with the literal rod. But this should be done, and not overdone, firmly and in love, without displaying the heat of anger. Children will come to appreciate deserved chastisement. And there are other places as well that kind of hint at the need for physical punishment. The Family Happiness book, published in 1996 on page 60, said different children require different kinds of discipline. Some are not corrected by mere words. For them, the occasional punishment administered for disobedience may be life-saving. A child, though, should understand why he is being punished. The rod and reproof are what give wisdom. Moreover, punishment has boundaries. I shall have to chastise you to the proper degree, said Jehovah to his people. The Bible in no way endorses angry whippings or severe beatings, which bruise and even injure a child. So this was in 1996. Admittedly, the language has softened since then. For example, in 2006 Watchtower, November 1st, on page 5, it said not all children need physical punishment. A footnote in the 2002 Draw Close to Jehovah book says, similarly, the rod of parental authority suggests loving guidance, not harsh or brutal punishment. So there are hints against corporal punishment in the publications if you know where to look. But nowhere do you find a reversal of corporal punishment. In other words, parents being told this is out of order. You do not physically abuse your child because they've done something, that they've misbehaved in some way. And this brings me to the most obvious observation about corporal punishment, and that's that it far exceeds the crime. The punishment should always fit the crime. And if the punishment is actually worse than the crime, so let's say, for example, Jessica were to draw on the wall. She's taken a crayon and she's drawn on the wall, requiring that we either redecorate that part of wall or we do some intensive cleaning or whatever. She's done something wrong that she knows that she ought not do. If we then were to smack her or beat her in some way, that would be far, far worse than defacing a wall. And in a way, it kind of is analogous of Watchtower's entire approach to discipline, because shunning is also a punishment that doesn't fit the crime. Let's say a teenager starts smoking, or let's say a teenager has sex with someone they've met. Elders then come along and determine that this, as punishment, this teenager must be shunned and estranged from their family. Well, I'm sorry, but cutting someone off from their family is clearly worse than someone having sex. So for me, in a way, the whole issue with corporal punishment is analogous of Watchtower's entire approach to discipline. What the organisation really needs to do, in my view, is outright say it is never acceptable to beat a child. But it would be probably, from their perspective, they would view it as too much of a U-turn from the way things have been done, from the things that have been printed in their publications, going back decades, encouraging witnesses to beat their children. How do you do a U-turn from that kind of thing? So those are just a few thoughts for you on corporal punishment. Again, it would be nice to think that this is no longer an issue, because certainly things have been printed in the publications to steer, that could be argued are helping to steer parents away from thinking purely in terms of smacking or beating their children. But what's really needed is a black and white statement. And I fear that until clear instruction is given saying it's never okay to beat a child, I fear that there will always be children who are being beaten in this way. And the really tragic thing is, as I've learned myself now that I'm a parent, is that it just is not necessary. You really can, I would say it's easier to discipline your child if you're not beating them, because again, they can respect you and they can understand that what you're doing is truly loving. So those are just a few thoughts on the matter of corporal punishment. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to subscribe to the John Cedars channel for more such videos. And as always, thank you for watching.